Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Mark Givler. I have Kevin Noon with me here today. The Ohio High School State Football Championships happened over the weekend in Canton. Kevin, I know, was watching closely. I was there in Canton. So we're going to talk about a few of the Ohio State targets from that. If you want like game highlights and things like that, check out our channel on YouTube, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We have like little 3-minute highlight reels from the games if you want to like learn more about what the actual games were. This is obviously a recruiting podcast, and we're going to talk about some players of interest for Ohio State that were up in Canton over the weekend. Many of them 26 and 27 prospects, sophomores and juniors for the Buckeyes. Is kind of the way things played out this year. First of all, Kevin, that first game, which had 3 Ohio State targets in it, Avon and Anderson, how cool was that? It probably wasn't cool for maybe Anderson, who wanted to throw the ball 70 times if they would like, if they were able to, but the snowball that we got there.
Yeah, not to mix metaphors or anything, but I think Ohio State fans would love to see that in Columbus, maybe not necessarily thinking through what Ohio State's strength is and everything else, but to see that type of game, bringing a Southern team in. But when I was watching the game on Spectrum, I was just shocked with the amount of snow that was there, and it's a cool scene. Now I've covered the state championships through the years. I mean, it's not a regular thing for me, and I've been there for some cold games, but I've never been there for a game with that amount of snow. So I'm glad you thawed out since that one.
Yeah, so obviously, like I said, that game had 3 Ohio State underclassmen targets in it. The primary guy, because this is the guy they've offered so far, was Jacob Weatherspoon, a class of 2026 defensive back for Avon. Kevin, what did you see from Weatherspoon, and just your just general thoughts on him? That's probably your first time you got to watch him, other than I think you may have seen him at a camp.
Yeah, I think I've seen him at a camp. This is definitely the first time, not only in a game setting, but a game of the biggest of situations. I mean, playing for a state championship, double-digit tackles on the night. I was impressed with him. I mean, again, you sit there and you get a little disoriented watching a game on TV in the snow. They tried their best to, scrape when they could scrape, so you could kind of see yard lines and things like that. And the TV broadcast did the best it could so you weren't just looking at like a sheet of ice like at Nationwide Arena. But I like Weatherspoon. I think he's rangy. I think that I think he's somebody who fits what Ohio State is looking for at the position. I know a lot of times that in-state players sometimes get devalued by big-time recruiting fans because Ohio State's become such a national recruiting program. But I can assure you that Jacob Weatherspoon checks off all the boxes, or at least 98% of the boxes for me at this point. And I'm not even sure what all the boxes are at this point, because we've just seen pen to paper for most of the class of 2025. We haven't even seen this transfer class or the portal class come together. So, for 26, I think I need to at least get to February before I really sit there and I'm like, okay, I really know who all these kids are, but I do know who Jacob Weatherspoon is.
Yeah, he had a really good game. He did. I think the only play he won back, he had a beautiful play, jumped a crossing route over the middle, and just was not able to corral the interception. Obviously, the snow's coming down, the wind is blowing. We saw receivers dropping balls. It was very hard to catch passes in that game. So he wasn't able to corral that, but he made a great play to break things up there. Was very active in run support and making tackles, all over the field, really, whether it be, guys running after the catch or in the run game. But so very active there. Versatile, there were snaps. He lined up kind of as like a center fielder, playing free safety, played on the outside of corner, played a little bit in the slot, played a little kind of like a strong safety, like more up in the box. I watch him and I think of Jordan Hancock, because that's kind of, Jordan Hancock's got some versatility to him. That's what I think is probably going to be his future should he commit to Ohio State. And I do feel very good about Ohio State there, but that to me is kind of how I view him. They've got the 3 stars in state with Albert Hill, Weatherspoon, and Victor Singleton of Central Catholic, who we'll talk about in a minute. And you want to get all three if you're Ohio State, but then you got to figure out how do you piece this together? And like Hill is clearly a corner, like an outside corner. And I think Singleton and Weatherspoon, with Weatherspoon specifically, give you some versatility there. I think Weatherspoon can be the Jordan Hancock there that can kind of play in the slot and play a safety or corner role depending on, scheme and depending on opponent. So I was very impressed with Jacob. I thought he had a great game. Again, it's easy to see why Ohio State has prioritized him so early. But there were a couple other guys in that game to talk about. Anderson has a very, very talented group of underclassmen. They've got 2 headliners in the 2027 class, a cornerback, Ace Alston, and an edge, like an outside linebacker, defensive end. I think probably going to be a defensive end, Antoine Higgins. We've talked to both. We've done interviews we've been down to Anderson. I know Kevin's been down with me at least once. I've been down there several times and talked to those guys in person. So we've had interviews up on the website, up on the YouTube channel with those guys already throughout their process. We'll start with we just talked about Weatherspoon, but Alston also showed, I think, a lot in that game and is definitely a name to keep an eye on in 27.
Yeah. 27 is just so young at this point. And I certainly, I co-host most of these Skull Session recruiting podcasts, but I only know about a 10th, maybe a 20th of what Mark does when it comes to recruiting, especially in the state of Ohio. So didn't know exactly who I was looking for outside of Weatherspoon, but Alston is somebody who did jump off of the footage for me when I was watching it on TV. And, I when you see somebody that young and, I know recruiting is speeding up and everything else, and it's really not that foreign to be talking about 27s. Hell, Ohio State already has 2 27 commits with Chris Henry Jr. and with
Brown.
That's what I meant. And Brady Edmonds. So, I think Alston is somebody who is already biting at this age. So just, give him 2 more years and holy hell. And, and Anderson has done a good job of really maximizing the kids that it has in its district. I mean, Anderson is not necessarily a program that I really remember talking about a ton a few years ago. And, they had some guys in the 25, cycle that kicked the tires on or whatever, didn't necessarily work out. But, I really liked what I saw out of that Anderson roster. I mean, again, I tried my best not to let the weather, prejudice me on anything, because I know that it really kind of takes any sort of, you hit a slick spot, there was a lot of wind, you sit there and snow blows in your eyes or whatever. You don't know what you're going to get. But, I think that the Anderson kids all responded very well in a lot of pressure situations.
Yeah, very close game. Alston had a second half interception, showed me a little bit in run support, kind of wasn't afraid to stick his nose in there. A shade under 6 feet tall, probably, 5'11" and a half-ish. Good size, needs to fill out a little bit, but I think this is one of the top players in Ohio in 27. I feel the same way about Antoine Higgins, who he's a kid who maybe doesn't consistently make the same, like Ace Alston. You go to watch Anderson, like you're going to see Alston do something pretty much every quarter or two. You're going to see a really impressive, like Higgins, it comes and goes a little bit, but boy, does he flash. Like he had a play on Thursday night where they ran, he's lined up, he's outside Avon's right tackle. They run off tackle left. He cuts that play down from the backside before a kid even gets to the line of scrimmage. Like he can make those types of plays. He's a very athletic kid. Once he figures it all out, because he's bounced between, is he an edge? Is he a linebacker? Once he figures that out, and I think he's probably just an edge. I would just, at the next level, I would probably just move him down. But once he figures that out, the technique comes with it, once the understanding and everything come with it, he might have even higher upside. He's a very, very high upside player in that 2027 class. Ohio State's recruiting both of them. They've both visited Ohio State already. So these are guys to keep an eye on. They've not been offered yet, but these are 2 guys to definitely keep an eye on there in the 2027 Ohio class. Then we got to see a very interesting player here for Ohio State recruiting right now. Like this has a little, we've talked about 2027 or even some 2026s where it's like that's kind of far off. This could have some very short-term implications, and that is Matt Ponatoski, the Moeller quarterback, just won Ohio's Mr. Football. I think it was like 50 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, or just something completely ridiculous, like just video game numbers that you generally only see at like the very small school levels where the competition level is just so unbalanced. This is Moeller. This is like a elite national schedule that he did this against. Now they came up short, a little bit of an upset loss to Olentangy Liberty. Ponatoski threw a touchdown pass, did not turn the football over, didn't get a ton of help all the time, had some drops from his receivers, was kind of running for his life there for a lot of the game. I thought Olentangy Liberty really had a great defensive game plan for Moeller. But this is a kid who Ohio State likes. He visited for the Michigan game. He's got some upward trajectory, mobility right now. I know Jared Curtis is the big name everyone's talking about. That seems to be more of take the field versus Ohio State at this point. But Ponatoski, he's got some upward trajectory. I know the people in the Woody like him. Kevin, like, how do you separate, like, maybe, okay, so like state championship game, didn't light it up, was fine, wasn't bad, but didn't light it up the way he did during the regular season. How do you kind of separate those, and kind of where do you see this going right now for Ohio State as they try and find a bridge now between Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds?
I view the game the way I think you should view it. It was the state championship game, and while you sit there and you look at the names on the front of the jerseys, and Moeller absolutely should win the game based on the name brand value, Olentangy Liberty was pretty good and played a really good game on whatever that was, Friday or
that was Friday night. Yeah, it all runs together.
Yeah, I know. I was like, it went Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think. Yeah. So, yeah, he looked good. I mean, you're right. He did not get a lot of help. And for those who didn't watch or not from Ohio, it was not a snowy Friday. It was a snowy Thursday. Cold. I mean, you don't go from snow on Thursday to shorts and tank tops on Friday. As much as we like to talk about Ohio weather being drunk, but I think he looked pretty good. I think that whole quarterback recruiting class for Ohio State is up in the air. A lot of people want to talk about Nathan Bernard out of Ashland. I mean, you talk about Moeller, though. We know who Moeller is playing. You look at Ashland, and Ashland is not playing Moeller's type of competition. I liked him. I mean, it made me go and find more footage of him because, again, you're in a state championship game. It's cold. You're playing against a team that has gone through the same gauntlet that you have to get to that game and everything else. And there's a lot of pressure too. And as I said, and you said, his receivers, could have helped him out a little bit more, but everybody's feeling the pressure there. I like him. I like him.
Yeah, I was impressed. So he's got really quick feet. He can move. He can move around in the pocket. He can move around, roll out, make plays. He can scramble. So he's got really good feet. He's got a very quick, short release. Gets a lot of zip on the ball. A different physical type of player than like Nathan Bernard, who you mentioned. Nathan's 6'4", 6'5", basketball kid, longer delivery, longer strides. Like maybe more of I don't want to say a project. He's had some great production at Ashland, but maybe a little more raw than Ponatoski, but again, has some of those physical things that Ponatoski doesn't have, the height and the size and kind of everything that goes with that. Ponatoski's like 6'1". The interesting thing about Ponatoski, I've seen him. I'm not a baseball expert by any stretch, so I'm just going off what other people have told me and what I've seen. I've heard he's arguably the number one baseball prospect in Ohio in the 2026 class. How does that factor into all this in terms of Ohio State's decisions and in terms of Ponatoski's decisions? That's going to be something to watch. I get the sense they're closer to offering Ponatoski than they are Bernard at this point, even though both did visit recently. That's my sense. So we'll see how it goes. But I think a bridge player like that would make some sense. You've got the 5-star in St. Clair. You've got a 5-star behind him in Edmonds in 27. And Ponatoski's on the rise. I mean, I tend to think he's going to end up at least a 4-star player. I'm not saying they're taking some 2-star kid here, but I think he's probably going to have at least a 4-star player. He's kind of a high 3 right now, and with the season he's had, I could really see that going up. But that would make some sense if Ohio State can figure that out, and if the baseball thing doesn't push him somewhere else. So that's something to watch. And I think that's a short-term thing to watch. I think they've really picked up their interest in him the last couple weeks, maybe month or two. And so that could continue through the off season. So I got to name to really look at moving forward there in the 2026 quarterback search. Another player I got another look at. I think Kevin's seen him at camp. Again, I've seen him on the football field, real football, several times now. It wasn't anything new for me personally, but Victor Singleton, Toledo Central Catholic corner, one of my top 3 or 4 players in Ohio in 26, had a monster game last year in the state title game, was the best player on the field. Didn't have the monster statistical game this year. Part of that, I think, Watterson maybe remembers kind of what he did last year, maybe didn't want to go that route again with the 2 interceptions and just kind of disrupting things, and wanted to kind of keep away from it. I think I was part of it. He did a little more on offense this year as well. They put him in spot duty on offense, made some plays at wide receiver, and again, kind of showed he kind of a physical presence there at corner. Big, strong kid. Watterson did win that game. Maybe certainly one of the best 2 or 3 games. It was a very competitive football game.
Yeah, TCC does. Central Catholic does a great job with its talent and everything else, and obviously being a parochial school, has a chance to really get some of the best talent from up there in Greater Toledo, and Vic Singleton is right there. I mean, he's a kid that I absolutely love. I think that we hate throwing around the term must land, but I mean, in my opinion, he's a must land. Anybody who comes out of Toledo because of its proximity to the team up north and everything else, we talked about it with Carter Lowe in the previous cycle. I think Vic Singleton is also a must land for Ohio State, a premium position, an in-state kid, and just a really good kid for that. I didn't hear his name a ton on the broadcast. This was another
generally a good thing if you're a corner, right?
Yeah,
I mean, generally a good thing.
I'm glad there isn't wagering on high school football, because again, I look at the names on the front of the jersey. I'm like, Central Catholic against Watterson. I have a lot of friends in college that went to Watterson. So I had friends that went to Watterson and friends that went to DeSales. So I mean, and they were always at ends with each other. But Watterson had a great game plan there. We didn't hear a lot from Singleton, but I do remember the game the previous year. I've seen it from him. There are a couple kids that I would sit there and say for his class that I have at the top of my list, and he is, if he's not at the top, he's top 2 or 3 for me.
Yeah, Watterson really tried to ground and pound. They made a couple big plays through the air on some broken plays to kind of pull that one out in the end. But I thought Singleton did his job. I mean, again, it wasn't the impact. I don't think people kind of knew who he was last year, and that kind of snuck up on people and had that huge game, the state championship game, that wasn't going to happen this year. But he did some things on offense as well. But yeah, generally when you don't hear a corner's name called, that's generally a good thing. So he was shutting down his half of the field and again, made some nice plays and run support. Again, he's one of my top few Ohio prospects coming into the weekend, and nothing changed coming out of the weekend on that. So it was an interesting grouping. I mean, we didn't get Glenville. Glenville got upset in the semis, so we didn't get another look at Sincere Johnson. Now we've seen him a lot, so it's not like we absolutely had to get a look at him. But so much of the weekend was, these young guys and 26 and 27, just guys that we are getting another look at or a follow-up on. And I thought they all played well. I didn't have any alarm bells with any of them. So it was a solid week. There's, the 5 kids that we just talked about all have a chance. Weatherspoon and Singleton have the offers. The other 3 don't yet. Would it shock me if 4 or 5 of them ended up having offers? No, it wouldn't shock me at all. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's going to do it for this episode. We just wanted to quickly go over what we saw from Canton, from the state championship games in terms of some Ohio State level interest. If you want more on like highlights from the games and who won and everything else and how those games played out, we do have highlight clips of the games on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, if you want to see those. But that'll do it for this one. We'll be back soon. We're going to finish up. We have 2 capsules to do that we're gonna run after this. That we're gonna, just the late guys that got added to the Ohio State class that we didn't want to just throw in there at the end of the day on signing day, and as the other 20 capsules needed to breathe a little bit. So we'll have those up as well on this site and on the YouTube channel. But thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we will see you again very soon.